Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Harvest Moon Defense Station, watching the sunrise paint the wheat fields gold. The sight never got old, even after 3 years as captain of the small garrison that protected the colony. Below him, 50,000 humans lived and worked in peace, turning what had once been a dead rock into a garden that fed the colonies. The morning air carried the scent of fresh bread from the bakeries and the sound of children laughing. As they ran to school, Jake smiled as he watched Dr. Lisa Chang walking between the research fields, checking the growth of new grain varieties that could feed millions more people across human space. This was what humanity was meant to do among the stars, he thought. Build, create, make life flourish where none existed before. His communication device buzzed. "Captain Morrison, we have incoming ships on the edge of the system," came the voice of Lieutenant Pete Hansen from the control room. Jake frowned. No supply ships were scheduled for another week, and the regular patrol wasn't due back for days. "How many ships, Pete?" "Sensors are showing 12 vessels, sir. It just dropped out of hyperspace near the outer gas giant." Jake headed for the control room, his good mood fading. 12 ships was more than any normal trading convoy. It was enough to make him nervous. "Are they responding to our hails?" "Negative, sir. They're not answering any communication attempts." "But Captain, there's something else. The computer identifies them as Zephyrian designs." Jake stopped walking. The Zephyrians were part of the Collective, the group of alien species that controlled most of the galaxy before humans started spreading to the stars. They'd been polite but distant during the few meetings between human and Zephyrian diplomats. They certainly had never sent a fleet to visit Harvest Moon before. "Get me a direct line to Dr. Chang," Jake ordered as he entered the control room. "I'm sending an alert to all 3 of our patrol ships. I want them back here now." The control room buzzed with activity as his small staff worked their stations. Harvest Moon had never been considered a military target. It was just a farming colony, important for food production but hardly a threat to anyone. Jake had always assumed that if trouble came, it would be pirates or raiders, not a fleet from one of the major galactic powers. Dr. Chang's face appeared on the communication screen. "Jake, what's wrong? I got your alert message. Lisa, we have 12 Zephyrian ships in the system, and they're not talking to us. I need you to start the emergency procedures, get the civilian population to the shelters, and prepare the evacuation." "Ships," her face went pale. "Do you really think they're here to attack us? We're just farmers and scientists. What could they possibly want with us?" Jake wished he had an answer. "I don't know, but I'm not taking chances with 50,000 lives. Start the evacuation now." The next hour felt like the longest of Jake's life. The Zephyrian ships moved through the system slowly, heading directly for Harvest Moon. They ignored every attempt at communication, every offer to talk, every question about their intentions. Jake's 3 patrol ships raced back toward the planet, but they were still hours away. The colony's emergency sirens began to wail as families gathered their children and headed for the underground shelters. Jake watched the evacuation procedures on his screens, proud of how calmly and efficiently the colonists responded to the crisis. These were good people, peaceful people who had never hurt anyone, Commander. Vexai of the Zephyrian fleet studied the human colony through his ship's sensors. The planet below teemed with human life, their cities sprawling across continents that had been transformed from barren wastelands into fertile farmland. It was exactly what the Collective Council had feared when they gave him his orders. Humans were expanding too fast, changing too many worlds, growing their population without limits. In just 30 years since first contact, they had established colonies on over 200 worlds. Their terraforming technology could make any planet habitable, and their birth rate far exceeded that of any other known species. If left unchecked, they would outnumber the rest of the galaxy within a few centuries. The Council's orders had been clear. Make an example of one human colony. Show them that there were consequences for unlimited expansion. Demonstrate that the established powers of the galaxy would not tolerate threats to the careful balance that maintained peace for millennia. Vexai felt no pleasure in what he was about to do. The humans below were innocent of any crime except being born to a species that bred too fast and dreamed too big. But the Council had decided that mercy toward individuals was less important than the stability of galactic civilization. All ships, assume bombardment positions, he commanded. Target population centers and infrastructure. Leave nothing that can support human life. Jake watched in horror as the Zephyrian ships spread out in perfect formation above his world. There could be no doubt about their intentions now. He opened a channel to every communication device on the planet. This is Captain Morrison. All civilians, get to the deepest shelters you can find. All defense personnel, prepare for orbital bombardment. This is not a drill. His hands shook as he activated the colony's defensive shields. They were designed to protect against asteroid impacts and solar flares, not military weapons. Against a fleet of warships, they would last minutes at best. The first energy beams lanced down from orbit, it striking the shield generators with devastating precision. Jake felt the station shake as the protective barrier flickered and died. But without the shields, the colony was completely defenseless. Sir, our patrol ships are still 2 hours out, Lieutenant Hansen reported, his voice tight with fear. Jake looked at the tactical display. 3 small patrol ships against 12 Zephyrian warships. Even if they arrived in time, they would be destroyed in seconds. But they had to try. They had to do something. Tell them to come in fast and hit the lead ship with everything they have, Jake ordered. Maybe we can break their formation. Give the evacuation ships a chance to escape. The bombardment began in earnest as Zephyrian weapons rained down from the sky. Jake watched his world burn on the tactical screens, seeing entire cities vanish in balls of fire. The wheat fields that had fed millions across human space were turned to ash in seconds. The schools where children had laughed that morning became craters in the earth. Dr. Chang's voice came over the emergency channel, broken and desperate. Jake, the research station is gone. The seed banks, the genetic libraries, 15 years of work, ... all of it destroyed. They're not just attacking us, they're trying to erase everything we've built here. Jake could hear explosions in the background of her transmission. Communication center where she was broadcasting from was taking direct hits. Lisa, get out of there now. Head for the evacuation ships. The evacuation ships are gone, Jake. They targeted them first. There's nowhere to run. The truth hit Jake like a physical blow. This wasn't a military strike or a warning. It was genocide. The Zephyrians had come to murder every human on Harvest Moon, to wipe them out so completely that nothing would remain to show they had ever existed. His patrol ships finally arrived. Charging into the Zephyrian formation with desperate courage, Captain Roy Stone's voice crackled over the radio as his ship opened fire. For Harvest Moon? For humanity. The 3 human ships lasted 90 seconds against the alien fleet. Jake watched them die on his screens, blown apart by weapons that could crack planets. Captain Stone's final words echoed in the communications. Tell Earth. Tell them what happens when you trust aliens with human lives. Dr. Chang's laboratory was hit by a direct strike, but somehow her emergency transmitter kept working. Jake could hear her coughing through smoke and debris as she spoke into the recorder. This is Dr. Lisa Chang, Chief Researcher at Harvest Moon Colony. If anyone receives this message, know that we died because we believed in peace. We welcomed the galaxy with open hands, and they answered with fire. The station shook again as more bombs fell. Jake realized that his own position was targeted, that he had only minutes left to live. He activated the emergency beacon, the one that would carry news of the massacre back to Earth. This is Captain Jake Morrison. Final transmission from Harvest Moon Colony. The Zephyrian Collective has attacked without warning or provocation. 50,000 civilians are dead or dying. They came in peace, and we welcomed them. Now they slaughter our children for the crime of being human. Dr. Chang's voice came through one last time, weaker now, but still defiant. Tell Earth what mercy bought us. Tell them that trust is a luxury we can no longer afford. The galaxy has shown its true face. I'll let humanity show ours. The transmission ended as the research facility collapsed in flames. Jake looked out at his burning world one final time, at the wheat fields turned to ash and the cities reduced to rubble. 50,000 good people had died today because they dared to dream of making dead worlds bloom with life. Commander Vex High surveyed the destruction from orbit, satisfied that his mission was complete. Every human settlement had been reduced to radioactive craters. Every evacuation ship had been destroyed before it could escape. The terraforming equipment that had made the planet habitable was now twisted metal and melted plastic. The emergency signal from Harvest Moon reached Earth at 14:32, Geneva time on a Tuesday that would change human history forever. Admiral Ben Carter was reviewing supply reports in his office when the communication burst through every priority channel at once. The automated systems had detected the Massacre beacon and immediately routed it. To the highest levels of Earth's government, Ben listened to Captain Morrison's final transmission in stunned silence. 50,000 dead, an entire colony wiped. Out without warning, the wheat fields that had fed millions across human space turned to radioactive ash by aliens who had smiled and spoken of peace during diplomatic meetings. Within minutes, the Situation Room beneath Geneva filled with the most powerful people on Earth. President Kate Williams arrived first, her face pale as she listened to the recordings from Harvest Moon. Defense Secretary Paul Martin came next, followed by the heads of every major space agency and military command. "Play it again," President Williams said quietly after the first transmission ended. "I need to hear every word." Ben replayed Dr. Chang's final message, her voice breaking as she spoke through smoke and fire. "Tell Earth what mercy bought us. Tell them that trust is a luxury we can no longer afford." The room fell silent except for the hum of computers and the soft breathing of people trying to process the unthinkable. For 30 years, humanity had reached for the stars with open hands and peaceful hearts. They had offered friendship, too. Every species they met shared their technology and built colonies that harmed no one. How many people know about this? President Williams asked. "The signal was automatically distributed to all colony communication networks," Ben replied. "By now, every human settlement in space has heard the news. The outer colonies are already sending messages asking for orders." President Williams nodded slowly. She had hoped to control the information flow, to find a way to break the news gently, to a humanity that had never known such loss. But there was no gentle way to tell 50 million colonists that their friends and families could be murdered without warning by aliens they had trusted. "Ma'am," interrupted Colonel Nancy Green from the Intelligence Division, "we're receiving reports from our monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. Zephyrians are broadcasting their warning message on all frequencies. They're telling every species that humanity must withdraw to Earth or face extinction." The implications hit everyone in the room at once. This wasn't just the murder of one colony. It was a declaration that humanity had no right to exist among the stars. The aliens who had spoken politely at diplomatic conferences were now threatening genocide against the entire human race. "Get me Dr. Stone," President Williams ordered. "It's time." Ben raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, are you sure?" "Once we activate the protocol, there's no going back. They made that choice for us when they murdered our children," she replied coldly. "Get me Dr. Stone now." 15 minutes later, Dr. Alex Stone entered the Situation Room carrying a briefcase that contained humanity's deepest secrets. He was a small, quiet man who had spent 20 years developing technologies that most people believed were impossible. Today, the world would learn that impossible was just another word for classified. "Dr. Stone," President Williams said, "I'm authorizing full disclosure of the Prometheus Protocol. How long do you need to prepare?" Stone opened his briefcase and pulled out a data tablet. "The systems have been ready for activation since the first alien contact, Madam President. We can begin implementation immediately." "What exactly are we talking about here?" asked Defense Secretary Martin. "I've heard rumors about special projects, but I was told they were theoretical research." Stone looked at President Williams, who nodded for him to continue. "The Prometheus Protocol is based on 3 revolutionary technologies that we've been developing in secret. The first is quantum displacement weapons. It can bypass any known shield system and destroy targets at the molecular level." He tapped. His tablet and holographic displays filled the room, showing sleek ships and strange-looking weapons. The second is self-replicating manufacturing systems. We can build entire fleets from asteroid material using automated factories that copy themselves. One facility can become 100 in a month, 1,000 in 2 months. The military officers in the room leaned forward, suddenly very interested. Ships that could build themselves were every admiral's dream. But Stone wasn't finished. The third. Technology is the most important, he continued. We call it the consciousness transfer matrix. Every human who has traveled to space in the past 15 years has been implanted with a quantum transmitter. When they die, their consciousness patterns are automatically transmitted to Earth and stored in quantum substrates. Admiral Carter felt his blood run cold. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Yes, Admiral. Every human who died on Harvest Moon is still alive in our computers. Captain Morrison, Dr. Chang, all 50,000 colonists. Death is no longer permanent for humanity, but resurrection requires enormous amounts of energy and resources. The room erupted in shocked voices and urgent questions, but President Williams held up her hand for silence. Dr. Stone, how long to bring back the Harvest Moon victims? With full industrial support, we can have the first 1,000 restored to new bodies within 6 months, the complete colony within 2 years. But Madam President, there's something else you need to know. Stone's expression grew darker. The consciousness transfer process changes people. They remember everything about their death, every moment of pain and terror. The Harvest Moon victims have experienced genocide firsthand. When they return, they won't be the same peaceful colonists they were before. President Williams understood immediately. The people who came back from death would be harder, angrier, and completely without illusions about alien intentions. They would be perfect soldiers for the war that was coming. How many ships can we build? She asked. With the manufacturing systems at full capacity, we can produce 1,000 warships per month. Each one will be crewed by quantum matrix soldiers, who can download into new bodies if their ship is destroyed. Our crews will be effectively immortal. Defense Secretary Martin stared at the holographic fleet displays. These weapons, how do they compare to what the aliens have? Stone smiled for the first time since entering the room. Sir, we've been studying captured alien technology for decades. Our quantum displacement weapons are approximately 50 years ahead of anything the Zephyrians possess. A single human destroyer could eliminate their entire fleet at Harvest Moon. Then why didn't we use these weapons before? Demanded Admiral Carter. President Williams answered before Stone could speak. Because we hoped we would never need them. We wanted to believe that peaceful coexistence was possible. The massacre at Harvest Moon proved that we were wrong. She stood and walked to the window that looked out over the peaceful city of Geneva. Somewhere up there, beyond the blue sky, alien fleets were deciding whether humanity deserved to exist. The time for hoping and trusting was over. Dr. Stone, I'm authorizing immediate activation of all protocol systems. Begin manufacturing the fleet and prepare for the first resurrections. I want Captain Morrison and Dr. Chang brought back as soon as possible. Yes, Madam President. There's one more thing. We've been monitoring alien communications since the massacre. Several species are already moving fleets toward human space. They believe the Zephyrian attack was just the beginning. President Williams felt something cold settle in her chest. The aliens weren't content with murdering one colony. They were planning to finish what the Zephyrians had started. How long before they reach our colonies? She asked. The nearest hostile fleet will arrive at the Centauri system in 8 months. She turned back to face the room full of Earth's leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, the age of human diplomacy is over. We offered the galaxy our friendship, and they answered with the blood of our children. It's time to show them what humanity becomes when you murder our families. Over the next 24 hours, the world watched in stunned silence as President Williams revealed the truth about humanity's secret preparations. The gentle explorers who had reached for the stars with open hearts had also been preparing for war. From the very beginning, the revelation that death was no longer permanent changed everything. Families of colonists who had been mourning there, dead suddenly learned that their loved ones would return. They would return as soldiers in a war that would reshape the galaxy. Dr. Chang was among the first to be restored to life. Her consciousness downloaded into a new body in a secret facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. She awoke with all her memories intact, including every terrifying moment of the massacre. The first words she spoke to her resurrection team were cold and precise. "Where are the ships? Where are the weapons? How soon can we make them pay?" The peaceful scientist who had died believing in alien friendship was gone forever. In her place stood something harder and infinitely more dangerous. The same transformation was happening to every human who returned from death, creating an army of soldiers who had nothing left to lose. Colonel Mike Torres stood in the command center of Mars Station Alpha, watching dozens of screens showing human colonies across the galaxy. 6 months had passed since the Harvest Moon Massacre, and every human settlement was transforming from peaceful farming communities into fortress worlds bristling with weapons. The change was incredible to witness. Mining stations that had extracted minerals for trade now manufactured weapons of war. Merchant ships designed to carry grain and supplies had been converted into warships armed with humanity's new quantum weapons. Every human in space had become a soldier in the war that was coming. "Colonel, we have a priority message from Dr. Baker on Luna," reported Lieutenant Sue Davis from her communications station. "The first production run is complete." Mike felt his pulse quicken. Dr. Sophie Baker had been working around the clock to mass-produce the new generation of human warships. These vessels were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, built using self-replicating technology that could turn asteroids into fleets. "Put her through," Mike ordered. Dr. Baker's tired, but excited face appeared on the main screen. Behind her, through the windows of the lunar manufacturing facility, Mike could see hundreds of sleek black ships floating in space like hungry sharks. "Mike, the first 1,000 ships are ready for crew assignment," she said. "But these aren't ordinary ships. Every vessel carries quantum matrix life support systems. The crews won't be traditional humans in bodies of flesh and blood." Mike nodded grimly. He had volunteered for the first quantum transfer himself, trading his physical body for digital immortality in service to humanity's war effort. Death would no longer stop him from fighting to protect human colonies. "How many volunteers do we have for the matrix transfer?" he asked. "More than we can handle," Dr. Baker replied. "Word about the resurrection program spread through the colonies. Thousands of people are volunteering to give up their physical bodies to become eternal soldiers. The Harvest Moon Massacre changed everything, Mike. People who were farmers and teachers 6 months ago are now begging to become weapons of war." The transformation of human society still amazed Mike. Before the massacre, most colonists had been peaceful people who wanted nothing more than to build new lives among the stars. Now those same people were volunteering to become immortal warriors who could fight forever without fear of death. Captain Ryan Cooper's voice crackled over the communication system from the test ship Terra's Wrath. "Colonel Torres, we're ready for the weapons demonstration. All recording systems are active and broadcasting to every alien monitoring station in the sector." Mike smiled coldly. The demonstration wasn't just about testing their new weapons. It was about sending a message to every species in the galaxy, about what would happen if they threatened human lives. "Proceed with the test, Captain Cooper. Show them what mercy bought us." Ryan had been one of the first volunteers for quantum matrix transfer after his family died in a pirate raid 6 months earlier. The gentle cargo pilot who had spent years transporting supplies between colonies was now the captain of humanity's most advanced warship, his consciousness housed in quantum processors that made him faster, smarter, and completely without fear. The target system contained 3 dead planets that had never supported life, perfect for demonstrating the power of human quantum displacement weapons without harming any innocent beings. The galaxy was watching through monitoring stations scattered throughout nearby space. "Beginning weapons test," Ryan announced over the galaxy-wide communication channels. "This demonstration shows the fate of any species that targets human civilians." The Terra's Wrath was smaller than most alien destroyers, barely 300 meters long. But the weapon systems Dr. Stone had designed didn't require massive ships. Quantum displacement worked by erasing matter at the subatomic level, turning planets into empty space. The first planet died in 17 seconds. Ryan activated the quantum beam, and the rocky world simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris. Field. Just empty space where a planet had been moments before. The weapon didn't destroy matter so much as convince the universe that the matter had never existed in the first place. The second planet took 12 seconds. The third took only 8, as Ryan refined his targeting procedures. 3 worlds that had existed for billions of years were erased from reality by a single human ship in less than a minute.
Test complete.
Ryan reported calmly. Quantum displacement weapons function as designed, transmitting technical data to all human fleet commanders. The message was clear to every alien intelligence service monitoring the demonstration. Humanity now possessed weapons that could erase entire star systems from existence. The peaceful farmers and traders who had begged for friendship were gone, replaced by something infinitely more dangerous. General Amy Rodriguez received the test results in her command center on Earth, where she was coordinating the largest military buildup in human history. The Resurrection program had brought back over 5,000 people from various colony attacks over the years. Every single one had volunteered for the Quantum Matrix program. Dr. Stone, how many ships can we have ready when the deadline expires? She asked. Dr. Stone looked up from his planning displays, his eyes red from weeks of constant work. Current production rate is 1,500 ships per month, and increasing exponentially. The self-replicating systems are building new factories faster than we can staff them. By the deadline, we'll have approximately 8,000 vessels ready for combat. Amy felt a grim satisfaction at the numbers. The aliens who had murdered Harvest Moon were expecting to face the same weak human forces that had failed to protect the colony. Instead, they would encounter a fleet equipped with weapons decades ahead of anything they possessed. What about crew availability? She asked. More than sufficient, replied Colonel Sandra Lee, who was coordinating the volunteer program. We have over 20,000 people who have transferred to Quantum Matrix consciousness. Each one can operate multiple ships simultaneously if needed. Death no longer limits our tactical options. The change in human nature was perhaps the most dramatic transformation of all. Before the massacre, the thought of giving up physical bodies to become digital warriors would have horrified most people. Now there were waiting lists of volunteers eager to make the sacrifice. Dr. Chang entered the command center. New body identical to the one that had died on Harvest Moon, but her eyes completely different. A gentle scientist who had spent her life helping plants grow was gone, replaced by someone harder and colder than steel. Amy, I want command of the First Strike Fleet, she said without preamble. I died watching children burn because we trusted aliens to honor their promises of peace. I want to be the one who shows them what happens when you murder human families. Amy studied the woman who had once been her friend. The resurrection process had given Dr. Chang all her memories and knowledge, but something fundamental had changed during her death and rebirth. The woman standing before her now was a weapon forged in the fires of genocide. Lisa, you're a scientist, not a military officer, Amy said carefully. I was a scientist, Dr. Chang replied coldly. I died believing in peace and cooperation. Came back knowing that mercy is a luxury only the living can afford. Give me a fleet, Amy. Let me show the galaxy what happens when you teach humans that trust is fatal. The conversation was interrupted by urgent alerts from the monitoring stations. Lieutenant Mark Johnson rushed into the command center with the latest intelligence reports. General Rodriguez, we're detecting massive alien fleet movements throughout the sector. The Zephyrian Collective has convinced 12 other species to join them. They're assembling a coalition fleet of over 3,000 ships. Amy felt her blood turn to ice. 3,000 alien warships was more than enough to sterilize every human colony in space. The massacre at Harvest Moon hadn't been a warning. It had been the opening move in a war of extermination. How long before they reach human space? She demanded. First elements will arrive at the Centauri colonies in 2 months, Mark replied. The main fleet will follow within days of the deadline expiration. Amy looked around the command center at the faces of Earth's military leadership. Every person in the room understood what this meant. Aliens weren't planning to negotiate or accept human terms. They were coming to finish what they had started at Harvest Moon. Dr. Stone, I need every ship we can build in the next 2 months. I don't care about final testing or crew training. If it can fly and carry weapons, I want it in space. Understood, General. I'll activate every manufacturing facility in the solar system. Amy turned to Dr. Chang, seeing the cold fire burning in her eyes. Lisa, you want a fleet? You've got one? Take 500 ships and hit their forward bases. Show them that the humans they murdered at Harvest Moon have returned, from death itself to collect payment. Dr. Chang smiled, and Amy shivered at the expression. It held no warmth, no mercy, nothing human at all. It was the smile of something that had died screaming and come back seeking vengeance. Thank you, Amy. The children of Harvest Moon will finally have justice. As Dr. Chang left to prepare her fleet, Amy realized that humanity had crossed a line from which there would be no return. Commander Laura Hayes stood on the bridge of the Terra's Vengeance, watching the stars shift as her fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Zephyrian territory. Behind her, 200 human warships materialized from the void like ghosts. Seeking revenge? The year-long deadline had expired exactly 12 hours ago, and humanity's answer to the Harvest Moon massacre was finally here. Laura had died 3 years ago in a pirate attack on the Kepler station. The resurrection process had brought her back, but death had changed her in ways that still surprised her. She felt no fear as she stared at the alien fortress world of Kethmer, only cold satisfaction that the time for justice had finally arrived. All ships report ready for combat, announced Lieutenant Gary White from the tactical station. Everyone else in the fleet, he was a quantum matrix consciousness housed in the ship's computer systems. Death could no longer stop any of them from fighting. Communications, send our message to the Zephyrian defenders, Laura ordered. The message was simple and had been prepared months ago. This is the human fleet, Terra's Vengeance. He murdered 50,000 civilians at Harvest Moon Colony. We are here to collect payment for their blood. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. The Zephyrian response came immediately. Human fleet, you are in violation of galactic law. Withdraw immediately or face destruction. Laura smiled coldly. Galactic law. They speak of law after committing genocide against farmers and children. She opened a channel to her entire fleet. All ships, assume attack formation. Target every Zephyrian vessel and installation. Leave nothing alive. The Battle of Kethmer lasted 18 minutes. The Zephyrian defense fleet consisted of 80 ships, each one larger and more heavily armed than the human vessels. Under normal circumstances, they would have been more than enough to destroy Laura's force. But these were not normal circumstances. The first human weapons fired were unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever encountered. Quantum displacement beams reached through their shields as if they didn't exist, erasing sections of alien ships from reality. Energy weapons that should have been deflected by advanced armor instead turned Zephyrian holes into expanding clouds of superheated gas. Captain Bob? Turner commanded the destroyer Swift Justice. His consciousness split between his ship's weapons, systems, and tactical computers. He had been a cargo pilot before his death, but resurrection had given him perfect understanding of warfare and an endless hunger for alien blood. Target the command ship, he ordered his weapons officer. Let's show them what happens when you murder human children. The Swift Justice fired a single quantum torpedo at the Zephyrian flagship, the massive alien vessel, over 2 kilometers. Long and protected by the most advanced shields in their fleet, simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there. The next there was only empty space, and the screams of dying aliens on the communication channels. The Zephyrian defense collapsed in minutes. Ships that had served the collective for centuries were erased from existence by weapons that ignored every defense they possessed. Pilots who had never known defeat found themselves helpless against human technology that was decades ahead of their own. Admiral Dan Foster watched the battle from his command ship, Humanity's Wrath, coordinating the broader campaign against Zephyrion. Space. His fleet of 500 ships was systematically destroying every Zephyrian colony and military base they could find. leaving nothing but empty space and radioactive debris. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender offers from 3 Zephyrian colony worlds," reported Captain Steve Clark. "They're offering to pay reparations and withdraw from all human territory." Dan studied the tactical display showing the locations of every Zephyrian settlement in the sector. Millions of aliens living peaceful lives, most of whom had never heard of Harvest Moon Colony. Before his death and resurrection, he might have accepted their surrender. Now he felt only contempt for their weakness. "Rejected," he said simply. "Continue the bombardment." Every Zephyrian world burns today. The systematic destruction of Zephyrian civilization continued for weeks. Human fleets appeared at colony after colony, each time delivering the same message. Before opening fire, the aliens who had ordered the massacre at Harvest Moon would learn that genocide was a game 2 species could play. Dr. Chang commanded the special assault fleet that struck deep into Zephyrian space, targeting their most important worlds. She had specifically requested the mission to destroy the collective's research stations, the places where they had developed the weapons used against human civilians. "This is Dr. Lisa Chang to the Zephyrian Research Council," she broadcast as her ships surrounded their primary science facility. "I was chief researcher at Harvest Moon Colony. You murdered my students, my colleagues, my life's work. Now you will learn what it feels like to watch everything you've built turn to ash." The research station housed over 100,000 Zephyrian scientists and their families. It contained centuries of accumulated knowledge, technologies that could benefit the entire galaxy, and genetic samples from thousands of worlds. Dr. Chang destroyed it all in 17 minutes, using weapons that left nothing but elementary particles floating in space. The galaxy watched in horror as humanity prosecuted their war with mechanical efficiency. News broadcasts showed human fleets appearing at random locations, striking with coordinated precision that suggested impossible levels of planning and intelligence gathering. No Zephyrian target was safe, no hiding place secure, the Andromedus. Empire made the mistake of providing supplies to fleeing Zephyrian refugees. A single human ship, the Righteous Fury commanded by Captain Nick Adams, responded to this aid by destroying their entire home fleet. 300 alien vessels were erased from existence in under an hour. The crystalline hegemony offered to mediate peace talks between humanity and the Zephyrian collective. The human response was to destabilize their sun, turning the entire system into an expanding ball of nuclear fire that would burn for 10,000 years. Captain Chris Murphy led the most dangerous mission of the war, infiltrating the Zephyrian homeworld of Zephyr with a team of Quantum Matrix commandos. Their objective was not to capture territory or gather intelligence, but to plant charges that would cause the planet's sun to go supernova. "Remember," Chris told his team as they prepared for the mission, "we're not here to conquer or occupy. We're here to erase an entire species from existence. Every Zephyrian who supported the massacre at Harvest Moon will pay the ultimate price." The infiltration took 3 days. Chris and his team moved through Zephyrian cities like ghosts, or quantum matrix bodies, allowing them to phase through solid matter and become invisible to alien sensors. They planted their charges in the planetary core, devices that would trigger a chain reaction in the sun's nuclear furnace. The final battle of the war came when the Zephyrian collective gathered their last forces for a desperate defense of their homeworld. Nearly 10,000 ships, every vessel they could gather from across their empire, assembled in the Zephyr system for one final stand. Commander Rachel Stone, daughter of Dr. Alex Stone, led the human assault fleet. She commanded only 500 ships, but each one carried weapons that could destroy entire planets. The odds meant nothing to warriors who had already died once and returned seeking vengeance. "This is Commander Stone to the Zephyrian fleet," she broadcast on all frequencies. "You came to Harvest Moon in peace, and we welcomed you. You answered our friendship with genocide. Now face the consequences of your choice." The battle was broadcast across the galaxy as a demonstration of humanity's new doctrine. The Zephyrian fleet, larger than any force they had ever assembled, was completely annihilated in 43 minutes.
Ow.
Human weapons reached through their shields, bypassed their armor, and erased their ships from reality with surgical precision. The Zephyrian homeworld burned for 3 days as human bombardment turned cities to glass and oceans to steam. Billions of aliens died in the flames, paying the price for their leaders' decision to murder human children. The species that had ordered the Harvest Moon Massacre was learning what it meant to face extinction. On the 4th day, Chris Murphy's charges detonated in the planetary core. The explosion triggered a cascade reaction that spread to Zephyr's sun, causing it to go supernova 12 billion years ahead of schedule. The entire system vanished in a ball of nuclear fire that could be seen from neighboring star systems. The Zephyrian Collective, civilization that had existed for over 50,000 years, was extinct. Every world they had built, every ship they had launched, every trace of their existence had been erased by humanity's vengeance. Where once there had been cities and schools and families, now there was only expanding plasma and empty space. As the flames consumed the last Zephorian world, humanity broadcast their message to the galaxy one final time. Commander Stone's voice carried across space to every inhabited world, every alien government, every species that might be tempted to follow the Zephyrian example. "This is the fate of all who spill innocent human blood," she announced, as the supernova expanded behind her. "We offered the galaxy our friendship, and you answered with genocide. You wanted to see what humanity becomes when pushed too far. Now you know." Ambassador Helen Cruz walked through the empty corridors of the Galactic Council building on Neutral Station Omega 7, her footsteps echoing in halls that had once been filled with the voices of 47 different species. Now only 20 seats remained occupied in the Great Assembly Chamber, and half of those representatives looked terrified every time they saw her approach. 6 months had passed since. The Zephyrian homeworld burned like a new star in the void. The supernova was still visible from most inhabited worlds, a constant reminder of what happened when someone decided to test human resolve. Helen had watched the recordings of that final battle dozens of times, feeling no regret for the billions of aliens who had died screaming in nuclear fire. The council session today would formalize what everyone already understood. The careful balance of power that had maintained galactic peace for millennia was gone forever, replaced by the simple reality that humanity was now the apex predator among the stars. Ambassador Cruz called out Speaker Velton of the Andromedon. "Survivors," one of the few alien leaders brave enough to address her directly. "The Council is ready to hear Earth's terms." Helen took her place at the podium that had once been reserved for rotating speakers from different species. Now it belonged permanently to humanity, just like everything else that mattered in the galaxy. She looked out at the sparse gathering of alien representatives, most of whom refused to meet her eyes. "Honorable delegates," she began, her voice carrying easily through the chamber. 6 months ago, the Zephyrian Collective murdered 50,000 human civilians at Harvest Moon Colony. Today, the Zephyrian Collective no longer exists. Let this serve as the foundation for all future discussions. The silence that followed was absolute. Everyone in the chamber had seen the footage from Zephyr's destruction, watched an entire civilization disappear in flames because they had dared to spill human blood. The message was clear enough that even the most arrogant species couldn't misunderstand it. Helen activated the holographic display behind her, showing star maps that outlined humanity's new territorial claims. The Human Accords established the following principles for galactic civilization. First, any attack on human civilians by any species will result in the complete extinction of that species. No warnings, no negotiations, no mercy. She paused too. Let that sink in before continuing. Second, any species that provides aid, supplies, or shelter to enemies of humanity will share their fate. The Crystalline Hegemony and Andromedus Empire learned this lesson when they chose to help Zephyrian refugees. The Andromedon representative shifted nervously in his seat. His people had lost 90% of their population when humanity destabilized. Their son is punishment for offering aid to fleeing Zephyrians. Only a few colonies on the outer edges of their empire had survived to serve as a warning to others. Third, Helen continued, human space is now defined as any star system within 50 light-years of an established human colony. Non-human military vessels found in these areas will be destroyed without warning. Non-human civilian vessels require permits from human authorities. The territorial claims were staggering in scope. Humanity was claiming dominion over nearly a quarter of the galaxy's inhabited systems, and nobody present had the strength to challenge them. The species that might have opposed such demands were either extinct or reduced to scattered refugee populations. President Williams appeared on the communications screen, her image broadcast simultaneously to every inhabited world in the galaxy. She looked older than she had during the early days after the massacre, but her eyes held the same cold determination that had transformed humanity from peaceful explorers into galactic conquerors. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, "1 year ago, we offered you our friendship and received genocide in return. Today we offer you a choice: accept human protection and live in peace, or follow the path of those who thought they could murder our children without consequences." Behind her, holographic displays showed the current state of human military power. 50,000 ships patrolled the borders of human space, each one crewed by quantum matrix soldiers who could not truly die. Automated manufacturing systems continued to produce new vessels at an exponential rate, turning asteroids into fleets with mechanical efficiency. The resurrection technology that restored our murdered colonists has a purpose beyond bringing back the dead. President Williams continued. Every human who travels in space has their consciousness patterns continuously transmitted to Earth. We see everything, remember everything, and forget nothing. Any attack on our people will be witnessed and recorded. Dr. Baker appeared next. To the president, her face showing the exhaustion of someone who had worked without rest for over a year. Our manufacturing capacity now exceeds that of the rest of the galaxy combined. We can build ships faster than they can be destroyed, and our crews can download into new bodies within hours of death. We have achieved military immortality. Implications were staggering. Humanity could afford to take casualties that would devastate any other species. Their production capabilities meant they could replace losses faster than enemies could inflict them. They had become an unstoppable force, guided by the memories of their murdered dead. Captain Torres. Now Admiral Torres took command of the human defense perimeter that stretched across hundreds of star systems. His quantum matrix consciousness could simultaneously control dozens of ships, coordinating defense networks that spanned light years. Death was no longer a limitation on human tactical planning. "All border stations report normal operations," announced Commander Betty Ross from the Central Coordination Facility on Luna. No alien military vessels detected within restricted zones. Civilian traffic is maintaining approved flight paths. The galaxy had learned quickly to respect human territorial claims. A few species had tested the boundaries in the early months, sending scouts or research vessels into human space. Those ships had simply disappeared, erased from existence without warning or trace. The message was clear. Human space belonged to humans alone. Dr. Chang stood in the rebuilt research facility on New Harvest, a world terraformed specifically to honor the memory of the original colony. Around her, children played in gardens that existed because an entire alien species had been eliminated from the universe. The monuments to the massacre victims bore simple inscriptions. They died believing in peace. We live ensuring it. Dr. Chang called out one of her young students, a girl whose parents had died in the early alien raids. "Why did the aliens attack us if we were peaceful?" Lisa looked down at the child, remembering her own innocence before death and resurrection had taught her the true nature of the galaxy. Because peace without strength is just weakness, waiting to be exploited. We were kind, and they mistook kindness for vulnerability. Now they know better. The economic transformation of human space was as dramatic as the military one. Colonies that had been dependent on alien trade now supplied themselves through automated manufacturing systems. Worlds that had imported food from other species now fed themselves using advanced terraforming technology. Humanity had become completely self-sufficient. No longer dependent on alien goodwill for survival, a young Centaurian diplomat approached Ambassador Cruz after the council session, species one of the few that had remained strictly neutral. "During the war, Ambassador, my people are curious about something. Will humanity ever return to the peaceful ways you showed before the massacre?" Helen studied the alien, seeing genuine curiosity rather than fear in his expression. Tell me. Diplomat, do you have children? Yes, Ambassador. 3 offspring that are the joy of my existence. Then you understand, Helen replied. Before the massacre, we believed that showing mercy and kindness would inspire others to treat us the same way. We learned that many species saw our mercy as weakness to be exploited. Now we show a different face to the galaxy. She gestured toward the viewing ports that showed human patrol ships moving through space like mechanical sharks. We remain capable of great compassion and wonder. Human colonies are filled with art, music, and scientific discovery. But we have also become something that the galaxy will never again dare to underestimate. The Centaurian nodded slowly. If a species proves they can be trusted, they show genuine friendship toward humanity, then they will find no more loyal allies in the universe, Helen answered. But that trust must be earned through actions, not words. Too many of our children died because we trusted alien promises of peace. Captain Morrison, resurrected, and now commanding the flagship Harvest Moon's Revenge, trolled the border systems where new human colonies were being established. His ship's quantum sensors could detect hostile intent from other vessels before. Their crews even realized they were thinking aggressive thoughts. The technology that had failed to save his original colony now ensured that no human settlement would ever again face surprise attack. Captain reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Karen Bell, were receiving a distress call from an Altarian merchant vessel. They're under attack by pirates near the Vega system. Morrison considered the request. The Altarians had remained neutral during the war, refusing to help either side.